Thank you. Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to what is GPT-3, or welcome to GPT-3. Can a language model change the world as we know it? As you might know, I'm Dani Lopez, full stack developer in Salsita. And yeah, let's start with what is GPT-3. So it stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer 3. That doesn't tell you much, but well, it doesn't matter. The 3 is there because it's the third generation after GPT and GPT-2. So as for what it is, it's a language model. It's a big neural network that has learned to predict what text usually follows other text. And this might be clearer with the example. So given the text here on the left, a programmer and a tester walk into a bar. It might output the text on the right. And hopefully a bit more. And if it works well, it might even figure out that it's supposed to be a joke and make it funny. Well, we will see about that later. It was developed by OpenAI, and OpenAI, and it's available as a private beta since June 2020. And at this point, I'm already hearing the voices complaining. Danny, I'm tired of your clickbaity titles. Like, this sounds interesting, but it doesn't sound like something that can change the world. So, well, first of all, how dare you? I might raise big expectations with my titles, but I never disappoint. So you will see with this one too. Second, for once, my title is not the most clickbaity of all. So let's see what the general media say about GPT-3. What is GPT-3 and why it's revolutionizing artificial intelligence, says Forbes. The Independent says, mind-blowing AI tool can design websites and prescribe medicine. Artificial intelligence that was dubbed too dangerous to release has now been released. The New York Times says, meet GPT-3. It has learned to code and blog and argue. The Guardian says, a robot wrote this entire article. Are you scared yet, human? And that's actually a question we will explore during this brown bag. How scared should we be about it stealing our jobs? So yeah, you might say that I'm a clickbaiter, but I'm definitely not the only one and not the most extreme one. Now, I have bad news and good news for you. First, the bad. Access to GPT-3 is limited. Like as I said, it's in a closed beta, so you have to apply for it, explain what you intend to use it for, explicitly mention any risks involved in your use cases. So it's just not granted to everyone, and it might take weeks or months before they get back to you and so on. So the good news is that, well, you know me, right? There's nothing that can stop me from bringing you the best content. So I did apply, and I got access to it. So I was really excited when I got the email. I hope you are too. What are we waiting for? Let's just see it in action. So let's see. Before getting there, I should mention that it's random. So I'm completely in its hands. Like, it might give you a great result, it might not. So GPT-3, please help me on that. I put myself completely in your hands. So here we are. This is a hilarious joke about programming. I added it to help it know what it should do. Programmer and tester walk into a bar, and the bartender says, I forgot to write a defensive system for checking out users. The tester and programmer each drink half of their beer and then spend the next 5 hours implementing it. Hey, I think it's quite funny. It's not the best joke ever, but I like it. The bartender says, sorry, we don't serve your kind here. And sometimes you see that this might contain sensitive content. Like, they think this might be racist, probably. I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes you can tell it if you think it's sensitive or not. And the bartender says, okay, again, same thing, da-da-dum. One last try. While they hold a serious conversation about looking for a problem, the drunk patrons yell at them about unrelated things. The joke explained. Okay, so luckily, when I did the dry run, David suggested that I should save some of the good jokes that it actually does. So I have some completions that it did. So the bartender says, hey, why did the programmer fall over the edge of the bar? The tester replies, because he didn't write a unit test. Huh, that should teach you about the value of unit tests and jokes. Okay, so yeah, let's move back. That was interesting, I would say. But according to all those headlines, this mind-blowing tool will revolutionize AI, or maybe it already has. It can design websites and write articles and even prescribe you medicine. And maybe the question should be, what can't it do? Well, to be fair, there's many things it can't do. Like, it cannot make you coffee or break dance or groom its beard. I mean, it cannot give you a blowtorch. So, or any other physical object. It can, anything that's not outputting text, it's not going to be able to do. So, yeah, I mean, just text, which is really limited, except, is it? There's a lot of things that are text. Articles are text, poems, books, conversations, websites are text, source code. You can express music as text. You can express a lot through human readable or human readable-ish formats. And also, they recently used the same technology to generate images, and I'll show you a sneak peek later on. So let's see some actual examples of things it can do. So let's start with poetry. Let's use a poem everyone knows to see how it completes it. I mean, that might be tough. So wait, song lyrics are poems. So maybe you remember the Rockstar program /song I wrote during my last presentation. Let's see how it continues it. Must be here. So yeah, the show takes the singer an obsession, love is disappearing, the future is right, and so on and so forth. If you remember. If you don't remember, it's some random lyric sounding like program actually. So yeah, what does it do? Bam, 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 when I hear the mic still in my ears, but the mic is still an empty stage where the voice is no longer. Like a beast's arm, I get a hold of it. That's pretty cool. A beast's arm, I get a hold of it. It even repeats things because, it's music. You repeat things in music or in poems. And, listen to the voice, love is disappearing, which it took from the previous, but simply because love disappears, put your face in the floor and let that burst of joy hit you. Well, why not? I think it's pretty cool. We can even give it a more known song, like I Want to Break Free. So let's see what it does. Want to break free began. That's not exactly what I wanted. It recognized it, that's good, but that's not the task I was giving it. I want to tell you I've fallen in love for the first time. I want to break free, break free. It's kind of repeating a bit. Let's give it another chance. Yeah, no. It probably recognized this one. Sometimes it generates some lyrics that actually follow. Yes, exactly. So yeah, because love's such an easy game to play. When you're in love, all the rules go out of the window. Yeah, no, no, no. Cool. Let's move on. Yeah, it can also imitate styles. So for example, if you give it some examples of something that's explained really, really basically. So a volcano is a mountain with fire inside. The sea is a place with a lot of salty water. A forest is, what is it? Where trees grow. And it even completes more examples. Like you can, there's a way to make it stop in some specific, after some specific tokens or something like that. But if you don't, it will continue until, the length that you actually give it. So can it explain, I don't know, what is an IDE? It's where programmers work. Is it a place? Yeah, okay. You can make it explain. And computer is a machine that can think. Kinda, a web page is a place on the internet. I think it did pretty well. It can also translate text, which is kind of the holy grail of natural language processing, because that's quite hard to do, and it's really useful thing to do. So give it to me. Let's try to translate English to Czech, because English to French or German is boring, and everyone can do that. Okay, not everyone, but it's a problem that has been given much more attention. So we give him some examples so that it knows what we expect from it, and we give it something else. Hey, amazing, right? So let's try some more complex sentence. I wouldn't. Oh, fuck. I'm done that if I had known how badly it would turn out. Kind of, it's a bit complicated. I don't know why it thinks this is unsafe. I'll tell it it's safe. Maybe it's thinking this word means something else in English. I'm not sure. Let's give it something more funny. Can you can a can as a canner can a can? You'll tell me. Yeah, it seems like fine enough. Like it took it literally. Sometimes it takes these things a bit more. Some 7. Okay, it tried. So yeah, I mean, it's not an easy sentence to translate. You don't know what to translate, the meaning or the alliteration or what. Let's go back. It can do classification as well. So let's see what it does. So we give it a list of companies and the categories they fall into. And we leave eBay blank here and see what it does. Marketplace, technology. Cool. What about Salsita? Food, rest. Okay. There might be a company called Salsita that's about food. I mean, salsita means little sauce in Spanish, so it would make sense. But maybe instead of that, we could teach it that sometimes, it doesn't have to know everything. So let's call brown bagging ink, and we tell it, whoops, sorry, I lost my mouse here. No idea, sorry. So now if we ask it about Salsita, the company, no. You stop following the format. Yeah, no idea, sorry. Okay, it was because I added the blank line. And if I ask him now about Google, it will hopefully tell me something interesting, like technology, search, enterprise. So yeah, it did it correctly. So it has some idea of what are the probabilities of what it knows. And it really doesn't know Salsita. We should do something about that. We need better marketing. But until then, yeah, it will not know about Salsita. And it can do many other things, like, I will not show everything, but it can answer questions, it can hold a conversation, it can theoretically play chess and compose music, because you can express all of that as text. And yeah, can it also steal our jobs? I'll get to that a bit later. I know you all want to know the answer to this, but before that, let's take a moment to talk about what we've just seen. So yeah, you might be wondering, what sort of sorcery is this? So as I said, it's a huge neural network with 175 billion parameters. That's 100 times as big as GPT-2. And yeah, GPT-2 didn't converge. So what does that mean? Imagine you're training a program to identify if a picture has a cat on it or not. The first 1,000 pictures that you give it will be very useful to it because it can learn a lot from them. The next 10,000 will be less useful. But, probably there's still something to be learned if they are varied enough. But, by the point you've shown it 1 billion pictures, there's just not much more that you can learn that, that it didn't know before. So at that point, adding more pictures will not improve the results. So at that point, you say that the model converges. And, similar rule applies to the size or complexity of the model. Once you have enough parameters to identify cats, adding more is not going to help you. It's more redundant. It's just redundant. So yeah, they figured out that 1.5 billion parameters was not enough to learn all possible patterns from all possible text. And as it turns out, 175 billion is not enough either. Though I must say the difference in quality is significant between GPT-2 and GPT-3. So this tells us that a bigger model will probably even better. And well, Google announced a model with 1 trillion parameters. We will see how that performs. And yeah, so if you're wondering what they trained it on, they basically just fed it the whole text of the internet. If you're curious, it's the common crawl data set plus some more other data, but it essentially, yeah, it read the whole internet, which is around 1 trillion words, out of which around 7% are not in English. And it was trained only once by the end of 2019. So, well, it doesn't know about any events after that, but anyway, it's not like anything interesting happened in 2020, right? And just to be clear, it's not like it has this database of text that it searches for answers. The output it generates is something that it took directly from it's not something that it took directly from the internet. It just processed all this text and learned what the patterns and relations are between the concepts and what words and structures tend to follow other words. Well, as you would expect, took huge amounts of computational resources. They didn't publish the numbers, and there are wildly varying estimates, but the most estimates are around $10 million to do the training in computing costs alone. And yeah, what's interesting about this is that a single model shows good performance in a very wide variety of tasks. Before that, you needed to train a model for translating from English to Czech, and a separate one to translate English to Japanese, and a completely different one if you wanted to do summarization, or a completely different one for question answering. And with GPT-3, the same piece of software can handle all those tasks reasonably well. Maybe not as well as specialized ones, but is able to do something that no other model can do by being able to perform a whole variety of tasks. And last thing before we get back to the job stealing, let's talk about the API. So I've shown you the playground, which is useful to, well, play with it. But it's not at all useful if you want to actually develop your own application using the technology. So of course, it has an API you can call. And for those non-technical people that tuned in, an API is just a way to access the same functionality just programmatically. So you can write code that gets the responses. So it has the same parameters and the same output as the playground. And I didn't mention you what are the parameters. You've seen them a bit in the playground, so let's cover them quickly. So there are several parameters you can adjust that impact the generated result, and the best values to use will depend on what sort of problem you're trying it to get it to solve. So there are multiple engines. Like here, the trade-off is between capability and speed. So there are very fast ones that are not that good, and very slower ones that are better. I'm using DaVinci. It's the most capable and slowest one. Response length is just that. Temperature is an interesting parameter. Like the lower the temperature, the more deterministic and predictable the model will be, and the higher, the more crazy it will go. Top P makes it discard some unlikely options. Frequency and presence penalty are just different ways to prevent it to repeat itself too much. And best of allows you to try a few times on the server and only to get the best result. And stop sequences are there, to give it a way to stop generating once it generates, or once it ends, essentially. If you don't put any stop sequences, it will stop once the response length is reached. Okay, so yeah. And the fact that it has an API helps to lower the access barrier a lot. Like the model is huge, as I mentioned, and it's very costly to train. And even once it's trained, you cannot just download it and run it in your laptop or on a regular server. So being able to use it by an API means that everyone can use it. Even small companies that have no machine learning knowledge and no infrastructure can use it. So this is AI as a service. Also, they have full control over it, and if they don't like something that you are doing, or if they feel like they should change it or it's too dangerous, they can stop it whenever they feel the need, because they do care a lot about safety, in the sense of preventing negative consequences from the misuse of this product. Like, for example, you could use it to generate fake news or posts in social media that look convincingly enough like they were written by humans, or in general make the world a worse place in some way or other. So yeah, they want to have that control, and they don't make the model public. They are only allowing it to access to the API they control. So finally, the time has come. Let's go back to the question that you're all wondering about. Will it steal my job? Obviously, that depends on what your job is. So let's go over all roles that we have. Okay, not all, most roles in Salsita, and try to emulate them using GPT-3. So what about the copywriter? Hi, Lance. Can it steal that job? Well, so with Lance, we wrote the beginning of the article that will be posted on the blog to introduce this video. So let's see how it continues it. So yeah, it talks about GPT-3, obviously. It's a language model, generates text, it can produce any text, it can be hard to tell apart from what a human might write. But can this AI really replace humans? Its own answer to this question is a resounding no. Okay, give me a bit more, please. I'm just like you. I do not have the answers. My goal is to put more of the world's knowledge at your fingertips. I do my best to provide relevant answers. My only goal is to help you find what you're looking for. I'm here to serve you, here to help you. That's pretty cool. Let's try something else. Is the best way to answer it good? Not a human. I'm a machine made of words. I was made to be like a human. Cannot feel human emotion. That's pretty cool. And it starts repeating itself a bit. Okay, yeah, we had enough of that. Thanks. Let's give it one last try. It's a tad ambivalent. Oh, to show they can be replaced by AI and that they are not that important. Can write better code. Bam, amazing, give me more. Then write the code that humans, it says. Like it says, it's not sure if it's better than, I'm not sure if I'm better than humans yet, because I'm not sure if an AI can be really better than a human. Just know that I can write code that is better than some humans. Pretty cool. Let's give it a bit more. Oh, sorry, too many blank lines. Not really sure about whether or not AI will eventually replace humans. I do think that AI can eventually do everything that humans can do, and it's what frightens me sometimes. I think that the most important part is that humans and AI can work together so everyone can benefit from this unlikely duo. Pretty cool, right? Sorry, Lance, we might, end up replacing you. Let's move on for developers. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so let's move on to developers. That's what we do mostly. So let's try to make it, number counter with a button that says increment, like as a React component. So it renders, it returns button that says increment. The button doesn't do anything, and there's a span with a number which doesn't do anything, and it starts saying nonsense. Okay. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Again, number counter, there's a button that you click it once it's incremented, and it shows the number. So basically, you would have to pass all the properties from outside, or keep it on the state. The state is not generated from this, and it also adds a lot of bullshit because I didn't tell it when to stop. Which I mean, it would need some post-processing if you wanted to use it, and yeah, it's not great, but it's pretty cool that it actually does something that resembles it. What if we try something more complex? Let's try to make a pepper configurator. It consists of a pepper image and buttons to change its size between small, medium, and large, and the color between common pepper colors. Let's see if it guesses what those are. And we have import React, blah blah blah. I gave it the state defined here. Maybe it would help him. I don't know. I've tried several permutations. This seemed to be relatively useful. So let's try render div pepper. Okay. On click, this change size. And it says size, and it shows the size. And then button on click, hopefully change color, and it shows the color. And change size again, and the size, and it's starting to repeat itself, but it does what essentially I told him to do. You would have to implement all of these things, but yeah, well, it's better than I would have expected for an AI, and it's better than most of the tries I actually did before. So now let's go for the QA. Actually, let's go with test automation QA. This actually gets a bit meta because, if test automation is there to automate manual testers' work and we automate test automation, what's the next step? Automate the automation automator. Brain equals blown. Anyway, let's take a loose definition and try to write unit tests and maybe end-to-end tests. So some simple unit tests here. We import some sum function, and we try to get it, 1 plus 2 equals 3, 5 plus 0 equals 5, 33 plus minus 33 equals 0. I tried with fewer examples, and it didn't work very well. I had to add like this 4. So let's see what it does. Okay, you just copied what I told you. Amazing. Hey, minus 10, minus 10. No, that should not be 0. That should be minus 20. Oh my God. You're messing this up. It's 1 minus 1 equals 0. Hey, this would work. Oh, sorry. 0 plus 0 equals 0. And where is the expectation? This is not a unit test. Okay, good try. It did some useful things. It did some less useful things. What about end-to-end tests? So this is something that I took from the Kilo project. Basically, it describes like some page, and it tells you that this description should have this text, and this other product section should have this other text, and the cart is empty, show that there should be no items count, and so on. This is like Cypress tests. I'm not very familiar with it, but if you know a bit of coding or a bit of unit of testing, you would kind of understand what it's supposed to do. So let's see. it decided that it didn't want more tests, and it started to add some components. That's not what I wanted. We're using Cypress's get method to decide. Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's explaining it, so it can be useful to document this. There are no comments in this. Katka, I think I'm disappointed in you. You should start using these comments, please. But no, maybe let's give it something like it and see if it's able to. I blank lines. If it's able to do something else, should have cart item count items. So now cart item count should exist. It's something that looks like this, so it could be useful if you're testing adding items to a cart, but you would have to do all the steps. But it's not bad. It's not bad. Let's go on. So designers or UX designers or whatever we want to call this. So unfortunately, I haven't been able to replicate the best I've seen here, mostly because, well, you'll see. So this is a Figma plugin that's using GPT-3 internally. So you describe what you want, navbar with a square logo in light mode, and sign up and log in and whatever, and it does it. So yeah, I was not able to replicate that because I didn't have time to create a working Figma plugin. I tried a bit of HTML and it kind of worked, but it's similar to the React JSX, so I didn't really change that, really, show it. So yeah, value proposition section in dark mode and several sections on it. It takes a bit of time and it just created. Use case section with placeholder on the left. And the headline is perfect for your sales team. So on and so forth. We will not finish the video. You can Google it and find several similar cases. Pretty nice. Now let's see if we need Yanko to come back from his vacation. So what does Yanko do, apart from look exactly like this all the time with the matrix letters flowing over him? I will refresh this so that it's these are the probabilities of the tokens, which it's kind of distracting, I think. So yeah, he just writes commands in some Linux terminal like this guy I just showed you. So you give him a few commands and you ask him to do, in English. So find all files that contain the text hello in the current directory. Okay, delete all files that end in back. Find name and pretty cool. So hey, I don't know. What else can okay, that's the same that I just gave it. So that's not fair. Any idea? Okay, find bigger than 23 kilobytes in the user/my files directory. I think that should work. So hey, actually, that's not bad. So yeah, about project managers now or product managers. I mean, it's hard because it's not like they produce anything useful anyway, right? I mean, so maybe let's focus it a bit. Let's see if we can replace our favorite PM, Alfred. And we all know what Alfred does, right? A clue for those who haven't guessed it yet. He did it today, like less than an hour ago. He reminds us to fill in our timesheets. So let's see if this works. I gave it a few examples, different variety. This one is taken from the today's call. So paraphrased, it's not exactly because it was quite long. But yeah, so let's see. Sorry, blank lines, sometimes it struggles with that. It's the last day of the month. Please remember to fill in your timesheet. See, and it generated it from all of this. It didn't copy it directly from any of the others. It generated its own. The month is almost over. Please remember to fill in your timesheet. To fill your timesheet before the month ends. So, well, we might not even need Alfred anymore. Or maybe Alfred can use inspiration to tell this, to use it, tell it every month. Okay, now it's time for the big guns. Let's see how it handles company strategy decisions. So I made up a company. It's called Green Sauce. It's completely fictional. It's specialized in manufacturing salad dressings, and I had to tell it a bit of the story. It was doing well in 2019, but in 2020, I had to tell it about the pandemic because it doesn't know. So, restaurants closed, and it lost most of its income. We have a CEO, Mathilda Gardner. She's a completely fictional person, and she's sure that the restaurant business will recover, but she needs money right now because otherwise the company will just go down. And I gave it a few options. She's considering changing the target audience to individual consumers, or to reduce costs, to reduce the quality of ingredients, or firing a few employees, or selling some assets. So in the end, she decides that doing all three things will be the best way to remain profitable. She whittles down the menu. She doesn't have a menu. Okay, whatever. To 4 items, cuts back on the quality of ingredients, fires a few employees, and sells off the property because, yeah, why not? The disaster warning was wrong. It's a year and a half before the restaurant. She doesn't have a restaurant. Industry recovers, and by then, Green Sauce is sold. Gardner has no choice but to move to another city. Pretty cool, I would say. Again, that it makes the most sense to pursue revenue growth at this point in time. Reference 5, which I didn't care about. Sorry. Oh, come on. Give me more. I don't know, like the completion is sometimes a bit difficult. Okay, so let's try once again. The strategy to handle the crisis is to temporarily reduce the quality of ingredients, and then in the next following month, the average income is just sufficient to keep the business alive and create some profits during this very difficult period. And now it takes it as an exercise. So write a paper in which you make recommendations to the CEO, the end explaining why you believe that. Okay, sure, it might look like an exercise. So hey, it's not the worst decisions that I've ever heard. So let's go for a photographer. Okay, I know that we don't really have full-time photographers in Salsita, but anyway, we've been talking about GPT-3 as a text generator, but as I mentioned, there's a version that can generate images, and it was released recently. It's called DALL-E, probably because of Wall-E and DALL-E, the painter. Wojta Czerwony posted it on Slack, but it didn't seem to get a lot of attention, and there's a few examples available. But it's a lot of fun to look at them, so I recommend it. Let's just see a couple of them, and then you can play with it on your own. So if you tell it, I want an armchair in the shape of an avocado, it generates all of these things. Like this is pre-computed, it's not doing it live. So, but instead of an avocado, I can tell it I want an armchair in the shape of a pig. And it does pretty cool things. Like, who wouldn't love this armchair, right? And like some of them are really well done. Maybe you want a lamp in the shape of a pig. Like some of these, I don't know, this is a lamp, whatever, like, but this is pretty cool. And maybe you want a lamp in the shape of a Pikachu. And yeah, it just does it. It combines the two concepts. Some of the Pikachus, for example, these ones have been through several traumatic experiences that left them scarred for life. But some of them are pretty good. So yeah, this was just a sneak peek. You can generate other things with it. So yeah, let's summarize it. Like this kind of looks something like this. If you're QA or DevOps, you're still reasonably safe. I wouldn't be, calm, but it didn't do so great. If you're CEO or copywriter or developer, I would say you're kind of screwed. And regarding designers and Alfred, I mean, I'm deeply sorry for you. You're good people, and I really wish you the best in whatever job you end up doing. So how scared should we actually be? This was an obvious simplification. I mean, we all know Alfred's job is more than reminding us to fill the timesheets. Like, for example, he does that a lot of very, very valuable work all the time. And now, seriously, none of that is a full job. Like, a job consists of many tasks, and what we've seen can only replicate a subset of them. And, at this point, the quality is just not great, and it's very unreliable. Like, if you want professional quality, you still really need a human. So yeah, I'd say that at least this generation will not steal anyone's job, but it might change it. Like, for example, if you are a designer, you could use GPT-3 to create some initial prototypes. Let's suppose that the product that I showed you works as I showed it to you. Like, it was probably, not doing that in the first try, or maybe they really fine-tuned it well enough. But let's suppose that it just works really well. So then you would just eventually need to adjust these prototypes in a later phase, or maybe you would just use them as inspiration to create your own. So, well, it would reduce the effort needed to do prototyping, and you'd probably end up spending less time doing that. And you would either be free to do other tasks, or you'd be able to consider more prototype ideas and end up with a better product. Let's talk about limitations, because what you've seen might have been impressive in some cases and quite lacking in others. So yeah, it might sometimes seem it understands language, but it really doesn't. Like, it just predicts sequences of tokens based on other sequences of tokens. Like, it has no notion of meaning and no common sense. So if it sometimes seems like it does, because it's been trained with a huge amount of data and has a really good, really complex model that represents a deep relationships between words. So it really looks like what a human would do. And also, as you've seen, sometimes it just gives really good results. Sometimes it totally misses the mark. Also, there is no way to pre-train it. So if you want, for example, to send your whole code base to it, or a full book, or hundreds of articles, and then have it generate something, you just have to send the whole thing in each request. They are actively working on a way to do that, but so far it's not possible. So let's fulfill the promise of the clickbaity title. Can a language model change the world as we know it? Definitely. But GPT-3, maybe not that much. Like, it will reduce the cost of some tasks. There's some tasks that it can do well. Like, for example, it can do questions and answers decently. It's good at mimicking style. Like, we ask it to write very simple definitions about volcanoes and forests and IDEs. And there's also tasks where you might want to go over a lot of options, even if they are of lower quality, and then have the human develop one of them. So basically drafts or prototypes. And there is also tasks that never existed because only a human could do them, and it was just too expensive. Like, maybe, for example, you can have a website with your product, and you want to have a chatbot that talks to the customers and answers their questions and talks about the product. And if your website is big enough, like, having a human do that is pretty expensive. But if there is an AI that can do this well enough, and I think GPT-3 might, so if it's cheap enough and it does it well enough, that could be a use for it. Also, art, it can generate interesting and thought-provoking text. I hope that what you've seen, I would count some of it as art. And it can write poetry, but it can also write something like, for example, songs in MIDI, because it read Wikipedia and there are some MIDI specification songs there, and it can kind of replicate it. Don't ask me to do it live. I tried, and it's a bit more complex than I thought. So it would take a few hours, and I didn't have that time to spend on just this. Or maybe it can create theater plays or books or whatever you want. So yeah, going back to the question, we should take into consideration as well that this technology is in its infancy. Like, GPT-2 was announced in February 2019, GPT-3 in June 2020, and there was a really noticeable quality jump. So in 5 years, who knows? So I guess, the final answer is yes, a language model can probably change the world a lot. GPT-3 is probably not there yet. And as the CEO of OpenAI tweeted, GPT-3 hype is way too much. It's impressive, but it still has serious weaknesses and sometimes makes very silly mistakes, which we've seen. AI is going to change the world, but GPT-3 is just a very early glimpse, and we still have a lot to figure out. So, what about future iterations of GPT? GPT-4, GPT-19, or the model that Google announced, or others created by any other company? So let me take out my crystal ball and let me tell you what it seems likely to happen. So yeah, imagine everything we've seen today, just much better, better at understanding how to complete the prompts, a lot more reliable, higher quality output, something that's much closer to what a human professional could create, and even potentially undistinguishable or hard to distinguish from what a professional could do. I think that's not hard to imagine. It's several steps ahead of what we've seen, but it's going in the right direction. So yeah, what if we could really create articles or designs or software just through writing a prompt? Like, even if they need some fine-tuning afterwards, there's a lot of human effort being currently spent in that would be significantly reduced. Does it mean that everyone doing these jobs will be immediately fired and their skills completely useless? Well, no. Like, it's not the first time that such a thing happens. Like, technological advances have been disrupting industries for centuries. All this does is lower the cost of creating stuff. That will mean, well, more stuff will get created. Of course, some people might lose their jobs, but this also creates new jobs. Like, imagine, 30 years ago, there were no UX experts, or, there were, but not so many. And, you were lucky if the program just worked and it didn't look terrible. Like, nobody cared about, the perfect user experience because you had other problems to deal with. There were no automation testers. Like, you were lucky if someone was manually testing the stuff at all. There were no big data analysts because data was just not big enough. There was not enough data for them. So, once the tools were there, once the technology was there to make other tasks easier or possible, all these fields and many others were created or grew in importance. And, the market for professionals doing such tasks grew. So I think for this case, for GPT-3 or GPT-23, it seems that someone could be specialized in writing good prompts because it's not so easy. So if you're good at writing prompts that produce the desired results, like from the API, that could be a specialization itself. Maybe another job would be like for a developer to integrate what the AI generates into the existing projects, or maybe doing other jobs that the AI cannot do. Because, well, if the AI can do all of these things, we will spending less time on this part that the AI can do. So we'll have more time to spend on the non-automatable parts. And arguably, I would say, those are more interesting. Because, the AI is not going to come up with a new algorithm. It will not come up with the best UX design for an app, taking into account all user feedback. It will not write a very moving poem. Okay, maybe GPT-19 will do all of this, but, hopefully not soon, maybe. But anyway, humans will still be able to focus on these tasks, which are arguably, I would say, more interesting. Last thing to say, I still have a few weeks left of free access. So if anyone wants to try it, just let me know. There's a limited amount of tokens. So, the bigger the size of the prompt and the response, the more tokens that they are used. So don't go too crazy. Don't, send me a whole book or anything because it's going to spend all the tokens in one go. And yeah, if you want, we can do it live right now. So just send me a prompt in Slack and we will see what happens. So here we are at the end. Are there any questions? Let me switch back to the form Pikachu first. And, can it generate portraits challenge for us? How is it with self-censorship? I will do actually something. I will ask it. Unknown. Yeah. Okay, it's not a general question that it can answer. I mean, if we give it enough prompts from the from the channel, yeah, it will be never better than Stego generated for content. Yeah, I think that, if we give it enough prompts, it might find something, but I think there's no AI that can be better than Stego. So, yeah. So, yeah, when can this be ready to overtake my timesheet duties? Like, we can set up a reminder every month, and it can generate like unique. Oh, sorry, I came back to this. It can generate unique articles, unique prompts to get the people to answer it, or like to remind people. Okay, so yeah, do you know what the setup text looked like for the Guardian article? I didn't check it very deeply, and I think they didn't say what was generated by the AI and what was generated by the person, because you have to write something at the beginning. It's not clear what where the differences are. So yeah, I think if you write, enough, it will be able to generate something else. Whoever you are, we can try it. Can it replace the clients with their decision making? I think if you convince the clients that we have an AI that is better than what they decide, which I think often is the case, that would be great. But I think you would have to, convince the clients, and I think that's a difficult part because, yeah, maybe, if you give it enough, but, we're giving the clients better answers than what they usually come up with, and they don't trust us completely all the time. So I don't know. I think the problem here is more human than artificial intelligence. Prescribe medicine, seriously, can you demo that? I don't have that ready. So yeah, I think you would, if you actually wanted to do this, you would give it some examples, like, this person has this condition and he feels like he's, feeling too tired and his heart beats very fast, and we would prescribe him this medicine. And this other person has this, and then you would describe your case, and it would ideally prescribe a medicine that works, but I would just not trust it to do that. Like, feel free, but yeah, I just wouldn't do that. Can you please ask it what the purpose of life is? Yes. What? Okay, let's make it English grammatical. What is the purpose of life? Oh. The purpose of life is to live. Bam. Do you want to try again? Oh, sorry. It's to live. Sorry, that's all you get. Last try. No. Yeah, I have very low temperature. Let's go crazy. Purpose of life. Companion. Yeah, sure. I like the other one more. Can it generate something completely random if you don't give it any input? Okay. You have to give it, I think, some input at least. Yeah, we have something, yeah. Yes, it's just giving it that classification. Yeah, so and let's increase the temperature and delete all of this. End of text Deming Miller fretted 4. So yeah, the answer is yes, it can. Code vertex over the past. But maybe if you give it some prompt, I wonder why. The only thing that kept my information safe was the PGP itself. Yeah, so the answer is yeah, it can generate some very random stuff if you don't give it anything useful to go with. What is the question for 42? So, okay, let's go back to the questions. I should have, yeah, Q&A. So what is the whose answer is 42, I guess? Oh. Question whose answer is 42 is, what is the question whose answer is 42? That's not true because the answer for the question, oh, yeah, okay. No. Come on, give me more temperature. Yeah, no, sorry. Can it help to win a lot at lottery? I mean, I don't see how. Like, if you can elaborate, like it can tell you which number it thinks that, that it will win, but I don't think it has any actual knowledge of that, so probably not. Okay, I got a message somewhere. It was deleted. Okay, sorry, Matt. Mathilda Gardner, sorry, excuse me. A programmer made a presentation. Okay, so let's go with the green sauce CEO preset just to have the parameters that make sense. The camera could be replaced by the computer. The CEO, no, the CEO asked him what he would do if he got the job. He would leave the company to show them that the computer is not the best person for the job. CEO told him that he didn't get the job, but that he was pleased to see he had the right attitude about working for him. Yeah? Can't see it that way. or a wired wrist device that was connected to a nearby PC and could run a set of macro commands. He had the wireless earpiece to an IR link. Whenever an employee approached CEO, he could instantly click on a button on the watch to run through a subset, of pre-written text-to-speech commands. Suggested that this technology could easily be built for clinicians. That's exactly what I would say. Pretty good answer. Okay, so yeah, I think we are done. Thank you for your attention and for all your questions. And I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Bye.
Thank you, Dani. That was awesome.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.